El Mencho, he grew up in the mountains of Michoacan, picking avocados. He dropped out of school at just 10 years old. By the age of 14, he was guarding marijuana fields for men who would never even know his name. Nacio Ora Cervantes, born in 1966 in Aguilera, Mexico, was one of 5 brothers raised in extreme poverty, with no money, no education, and no way out. He had to create his own path. In his late teens, he illegally crossed into California. But the better life he'd hoped for never came. Instead, he got tangled in the drug trade. He was arrested at 19 for stolen property and a loaded gun, then again for selling narcotics, and later on federal heroin charges along with his brother. He recognized the undercover officers before his brother did, but by then, it was already too late. To protect his brother from a life sentence, he pleaded guilty and took a 5-year sentence. After serving 3, he was deported. At 30, he was finished with playing small. He joined the police force in Jalisco, later quitting and joining the Millennial Cartel. He married the sister of a cartel boss and started climbing the ranks. When his superiors were arrested or killed, he didn't grieve. He reorganized. In 2010, he founded the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Under his leadership, the CJNG shot down military helicopters, assassinated judges, and used drones to bomb government buildings. The U.S. put a $15 million bounty on his head. There were few photos of him. He moved like a ghost, shielded by 400 gunmen and landmines. On February 22, 2026, Mexican special forces stormed his hideout in Talpa, Jalisco. He'd hosted a party the night before, and his guards were off guard. El Mencho fled into the woods. Wounded soldiers found him in the underbrush. He was airlifted, but died before the helicopter even landed. Within hours, burning cars blocked highways in 20 states. Guadalajara went silent. The avocado farmer's son had become the most wanted man in the Western Hemisphere, and even in death, he brought a nation to its knees. Khun Sa, he lost his father when he was just 3. His mother died 2 years later, and the only thing he learned was how to fight and grow opium. Khun was born in 1934 in Lima, a remote village in Burma Shan State. Half Chinese and half Shan, he was raised by his grandfather. He never learned how to read or write. By the age of 16, he had formed his first armed gang. In his 20s, he trained with Chinese nationalist soldiers who had fled to Burma while learning the opium trade. In 1963, the Burmese government offered him a deal: fight local rebels, and they'd let him use their roads to traffic opium. He accepted. In just a few years, he became one of the region's most powerful militia leaders. But in 1967, a rival ambush nearly destroyed him. The Laotian army bombed his mule train and stole his opium. In 1969, he was arrested for treason and spent 5 years in Mandalay prison. But the time behind bars didn't break him. He read Sun Tzu's The Art of War and came out sharper than before. After his release, he rebuilt his empire. He moved to Thailand and created the Muay Thai Army, 20,000 soldiers strong. With heroin refineries and a network that supplied nearly half of the heroin entering the United States, the D called his heroin 90% pure. The U.S. put a $2 million bounty on his head. Khun even offered to sell his entire opium crop to Western governments in exchange for aid, but both times they refused. By the mid-90s, rival armies closed in on him. In 1996, he made a secret deal with the Burmese military to surrender his army. And in return, no extradition, no trial, no prison. He moved to Yangon with his fortune and 4 teenage mistresses. He died in 2007 at the age of 73 from diabetes, heart disease, and old age, in his bed, never facing a single day in court. The Opium King remained unpunished. Félix Mitchell, he grew up in the projects on 69th Avenue in East Oakland with no money and no way out. So, he built his escape through heroin. Felix Wayne Mitchell Jr. was born in 1954 in Oakland, California. He dropped out of high school and, as a teenager, formed the 69 Mob, a crew from his block. What started as petty crimes soon grew into one of the largest street drug operations in the Bay Area. He connected with kingpins in Los Angeles and Detroit. building a heroin empire across California and the Midwest. At its peak, the '69 mob pulled in up to $1 million a month. Mitchell branded his product, stamping the envelopes marked 69, and put kids on every corner as lookouts and runners. If a rival gang moved in, Mitchell's response was swift to drive-by. He didn't just control the drug trade. He wrote the playbook that the streets would follow for decades. The money, he lived like royalty rolls. Royalses, jewelry, lavish parties, but he also gave back to the community, funding youth programs and donating turkeys to families in need. In East Oakland, he became a folk hero. Before sentencing, he told his probation officer, "I like money. I like jewelry. I like fine cars, and I went out and got them. Isn't that the American way?" But the law eventually caught up with him. In 1985, convicted under federal kingpin statutes, he was sentenced to life without parole. The judge called it a reign of terror. On August 21, 1986, just 2 days before his 32nd birthday, a fellow inmate stabbed him multiple times in his cell at Leavenworth. Died that night over a $10 debt. His funeral made national news. A horse-drawn carriage carried his bronze casket through 8 miles of Oakland streets, trailed by Rolls-Royces and limousines. Over 8,000 people lined the route. But after Mitchell's death, Oakland descended into chaos. Without his control, dozens of gangs went to war and violence exploded. Criminologists dubbed it the Félix Mitchell paradox. The king was dead, but his kingdom burned. Amado Carrillo Fuentes at 12. He left his village and vowed he wouldn't return until he was rich, and he kept that promise. Amado Carrillo Fuentes was born in 1956 in Guamilito, Sinaloa. His father was a farmer, and his uncle was Don Neto, co-founder of the Guadalajara cartel. By his teens, Amado had left home and started learning the drug trade under his uncle, overseeing cocaine shipments across Chihuahua. Was quickly learning border operations from Pablo Acosta and working alongside Rafael Aguilar Gardo, who ran the Juarez corridor. In 1993, Amado had Aguilar killed in Cancun and took control of the cartel. What followed changed everything. He bought 30 Boeing 727s, stripped them of seats, and flew up to 15 tons of cocaine per trip from Colombia to Mexico. Became known as El Señor de los Cielos, the Lord of the Skies. He forged alliances with the Cali cartel, bribed generals and politicians, and at his peak, his net worth was estimated at $25 billion. He even had Mexico's top anti-drug official on his payroll. But by 1997, the walls were closing in. U.S. indictments, his military protector arrested, and agents nearly caught him at his sister's wedding, decided to change his appearance. On July 4, 1997, he checked into a Mexico City hospital under a fake name, underwent 8 hours of surgery, reshaped his face, and had 3.5 gallons of fat removed. He was wheeled into recovery, but by morning, he was dead. The official cause: complications from anesthesia. Months later, 3 doctors who operated on him were found tortured, strangled, and dumped in steel barrels along a highway. His cousin told reporters, "Amado is fine. He's alive." But the Lord of the Skies never reappeared. No one could prove where he went. Griselda Blanco at 11, she allegedly kidnapped a boy from a wealthy neighborhood. But when the family didn't pay the ransom, she shot him. By then, she was already a pickpocket. By the age of 30, she would be running one of the most violent cocaine empires in U.S. history. Griselda Blanco was born in 1943 in Colombia, raised in the slums of Medellín, by a mother who worked as a prostitute and abused by the men who came through. At 19, she ran away. By her 20s, she had married a small-time criminal, had 3 sons, and crossed illegally into the U.S. with fake documents. In Queens, New York, she and her second husband, Alberto Bravo, created a cocaine pipeline from Colombia. Using female couriers who smuggled drugs and custom lingerie, when she suspected Bravo of stealing, she shot him dead in front of their 5-year-old son. Later,